Here's just a few reasons why I think the prosecutors did not win their case against Diddy. And I think the first reason is witness selection. And now we know obviously they had to call Cassie and Jane because Cassie is or was the star witness, and Jane was also one of the alleged victims. So at the time, those two were given, they had to be called. The one name that permeated the whole trial and was never called to testify as a witness, and so many people are wondering why she was never called, was Christina Karam. Diddy's right brain, Diddy's former chief of staff, Diddy's everything in a business sense. And so you see all these texts and all these messages and all her emails, arranging everything, allegedly doing all of these things. And I think it would have been more persuasive if they had subpoenaed her, for example, if she didn't want to testify, serve her with a subpoena to see exactly the influence her testimony would have on the jurors to help them with that RICO element. And in the same breath as Christina Karam, D-Rock would also have been a good witness. Not sure how they would have appeared on cross-examination, but at least you have their testimony there in front of you, and the prosecution can elicit that testimony to paint the picture that they were trying to show about the enterprise, the criminal network, and the racketeering. And with the topic of witnesses, we did have the issue of Jane. Now, even though Jane was one of the alleged victims during the time, she still said that she loved Diddy, and she still showed that Diddy was still influential. He was paying for her rent. He even paid her lawyer's fees, even with Cassie. The defense put in text messages where she was arranging freak-offs. Now, I'm no way discounting the abuse that she suffered at the hands of Diddy. We've all seen that. However, the question here was whether both Jane and Cassie were willing participants, and even if there was a sprinkle of doubt, just a sprinkle of doubt, the jurors would not convict. And I think it's a reasonable doubt that enabled them to acquit Diddy on the most serious charges that he was facing. And so whether you think the verdict is fair or not is really immaterial at this point. It's whether the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt all of the elements of the counts, and the jury obviously believed that they didn't. They only proved the transportation. One last thing I will say with reference to the Intercontinental Hotel video, which we've all seen, I imagine, and it is disgusting, and it portrays Diddy assaulting Cassie. As I said, it's absolutely awful video. Now, that can be shown to, show Diddy's propensity for violence. However, he wasn't charged for domestic V. There was no DV charge on the indictment. So even though it can be shown to say that he can be a violent person, the jury thought that it wasn't as persuasive in the charges that he was charged with. I really think the prosecution overcharged and are not happy with just a transportation of P. Because realistically, who would want to take this case and just get away with that verdict if you are a federal prosecutor who has a 97% conviction rate? And I also think the prosecution are going for the maximum sentence, maybe to make up for all of that, but it's highly unlikely that he'll serve 20 years. I made a video about sentencing previously, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, those are some of the tweaks that the prosecution could have made, but to be honest, it's all what the jury sees and all about the evidence that they can believe beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, the prosecution proved the case. They have the burden of reasonable doubt. The defense do not have to prove anything. And in fact, the defense didn't even call any witnesses because they didn't have to. So this was a win. The prosecution will not be happy. But even though Diddy's still guilty of transportation of P, This is a win for him because he is not guilty of the major charges. Let me know what you think in the comments below.